She put a crown on a candle, and now she's in the Supreme Court. Let that sink in for a moment. We're not talking about a cheeky Etsy shop mistake. We're talking about a deliberate act that may have just lit the fuse for a full-blown royal war. Prince William, heir to the British throne, future king of the United Kingdom, is now taking legal action that could permanently redefine Meghan Markle's relationship to the monarchy. And it's all because of a monogram. A single, elegant, coronet-topped M that quietly appeared on a candle box and instantly detonated a legal firestorm. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What in the world is going on? Why would a prince go to such lengths over a branding logo? Why does a duchess, who claimed she wanted to step back from royal life, keep pulling it back into her business ventures? And how did we get here? From wedding bells at Windsor to court subpoenas in London? If you think this is just another tabloid squabble, think again. Because this time, it's not just about PR. It's about power, identity, and the very future of what it means to be royal in the age of influencer capitalism. But let's rewind for a second, because you need to understand just how calculated, how symbolic, and how explosive this story really is. The monogram that shook the palace. The monogram in question is deceptively simple. At first glance, it's an ornate M topped with a delicate coronet, a stylized miniature crown traditionally used in the heraldry of the British royal family. You might have missed it at first. Many people did, but Palisades didn't. You see, in royal circles, every detail matters. Every curl on a letter, every jewel on a crown, and especially every symbol used by former royals who no longer represent the monarchy officially. Now, this coronet-topped M didn't just appear in a random post or a leaked image. It was part of the official branding for Meghan Markle's newly launched lifestyle company, As Ever. What is As Ever? Think Goop meets British aristocracy. Think cashmere throws, minimalist lavender candles, handwritten quotes about resilience and grace. But behind this self-care chic aesthetic is a very pointed message. Meghan is back, on her terms, and she's reclaiming the narrative. Elegantly, luxuriously, and yes, royally. But that's where Prince William draws the line. Because using royal iconography in commercial endeavors, especially after explicitly agreeing not to, is more than just poor taste. It's potentially illegal. Why this story matters now? We've all seen the evolution, or the unraveling, of the Sussex saga. From the fairy tale wedding in 2018, to Megxit in 2020, to Oprah's explosive interview in 2021, to Netflix documentaries, Spotify deals, Archwell drama, canceled cartoons, and broken friendships. Every chapter has inched us closer to this moment. But this is different. This isn't Meghan just speaking her truth. This isn't Harry releasing a memoir. This is Prince William, the stoic, calculated, usually silent heir, saying, no more. And it's not just a cease and desist letter from a palace lawyer. It's not just whispers behind closed doors. It's a full-on Supreme Court filing, the highest legal arena in the United Kingdom. Let that sink in. This isn't a press war. It's a courtroom war. Because while the public may argue over who's right or wrong, the legal system doesn't deal in popularity. It deals in precedent, in contracts, in protocol. And according to multiple insiders, Meghan Markle is being accused of violating the terms of the agreement she made in 2020 when she stepped back as a working royal. Specifically, she agreed not to use any royal branding, titles, or symbols for commercial gain. And yet, here we are. Crown, candle, courtroom. It sounds absurd until you realize what's truly at stake. Meghan's monogram, a symbol or a strategy. Now, here's where things get murkier and a whole lot more dramatic. Supporters of Meghan claim this monogram isn't new. They say she's had a version of this symbol since her wedding days, even before she left royal life. That she's simply using her personal identity and not trying to claim royal endorsement. But here's the catch. When you attach a royal cipher, a symbol traditionally reserved for reigning monarchs and their immediate family, to a commercial product, you walk straight into legal quicksand. According to royal protocol, only working royals are allowed to use official coronets in branding. And even then, they require express approval from the monarch, currently King Charles. Meghan doesn't have that approval. In fact, when she and Harry stepped down, They specifically lost the right to use HRH in public or commercial settings. That includes associated emblems. So why is this monogram, appearing on a luxury candle under her new business, triggering such fury? Because it's not just about the crown on a product. It's about Meghan claiming an identity she walked away from and using it to build a multi-million-dollar empire. And William? He's had enough. A royal response unlike any other. Multiple royal correspondents have confirmed that Prince William's decision to pursue this legally wasn't made lightly. For months, maybe years, he watched as Meghan and Harry tested the boundaries of their post-royal agreement. He bit his tongue through Netflix. He held his ground during Spare. He ignored the jabs, the subtle insults, the dramatic recreations. But the monogram? That crossed a line. Because in William's view, it's not just about personal branding. It's about institutional integrity. And let's be honest, the British royal family is still reeling from scandal after scandal. Andrew, Harry, Meghan, health crises, cost of living criticisms. The monarchy is walking on a very thin wire of public trust. So when a former duchess starts printing coronet-top candles, it's not just bad optics. It's potentially disastrous for the crown's image. That's why William escalated. Not through back channels, not through gossip, but through the one system even royalty must respect, the law. And sources say this case could set a legal precedent for every former royal going forward. Which means, yes, you guessed it, Meghan's branding war might change how every single royal markets themselves after stepping down. The curious timing of As Ever. Now here's a twist no one saw coming. The launch of As Ever, the timing, the aesthetics, the tone, all seems eerily calculated. Just days before palace officials were finalizing a massive coronation anniversary event, Meghan's branding appeared online. The monogram, the coronet, the candle. It was subtle, sure, but insiders claim it was intentional. One palace aide reportedly said, "It was a shot across the bow. She knew we'd see it. She wanted us to." Is Meghan provoking the monarchy? Testing limits? Reclaiming power? Or is she simply branding like any savvy entrepreneur would? That's the crux of this courtroom drama. Intent versus impact. Identity versus inheritance. And in the middle of it all, two siblings, two sons of Diana, now standing on opposite sides of a legal battlefield. So why does William care so much? This might be the most important question of all. Why would a man poised to become King of England care about one monogram on one candle? Because it's not just about Meghan. It's about everything that came after she entered that palace. The interviews, the accusations, the Spotify disasters, the Netflix docuseries, the rumors, the silence, and now, the merchandise. This monogram is the final straw, a symbol of what William sees as betrayal, arrogance, and ongoing disrespect. You might say he's trying to draw a line in the sand, to say, this far, no further. But what happens when that line becomes a courtroom verdict? When personal betrayal becomes public spectacle? And when the woman who once called the royal family a gilded cage starts selling candles shaped like the bars? The stakes have never been higher. Make no mistake, this case isn't just about a candle or a monogram. It's about the soul of the monarchy in a modern world. Can royal identity be trademarked? Should a former duchess be allowed to profit off symbols she once rejected? What happens when duty meets branding and royalty meets reality TV? Because if William wins, Meghan's brand might crumble. But if Meghan wins, she could become the blueprint for every ex-royal influencer to come. And the monarchy may never recover. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. What could possibly be so dangerous about a candle? Not just any candle, of course. We're talking about the candle, the now infamous centerpiece of Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand, As Ever. A product so seemingly harmless, it became the spark that ignited one of the most high-profile legal battles the monarchy has faced in decades. It wasn't the scent that caught the palace off guard. It wasn't the lavender or the clary sage or the subtle notes of sandalwood. It was the box. That white minimalist box, embossed with a strikingly elegant M, topped with a coronet. And in that moment, everything changed. Let's rewind to the quiet, seemingly insignificant day when the image first dropped. There were no royal reporters foaming at the mouth. No media blitz. Just a soft launch, quiet, curated, intentional. An Instagram story. A quick flash of product. A caption about balance and resilience and the power of stillness. But there it was, nestled between folds of tissue paper and poetic brand copy, a candle branded with a royal cipher. A monogram that said more in silence than any interview ever could. And somewhere, on the other side of the Atlantic, Prince William saw it. And he didn't just see a product. He saw a provocation. From wedding stationery to candle commerce. To understand why this tiny piece of wax triggered a royal eruption, you need to know where that monogram came from. It wasn't new. In fact, Meghan's monogram, an italicized M crowned with a coronet, had made its debut years earlier, during her brief time as a working royal. It appeared on thank you notes, personal correspondence, and official Duchess-related stationery. At the time, it was appropriate, authorized, expected. She was the Duchess of Sussex, a member of the royal family. She had a right to it. But that was before 2020, before the exit, before the rebranding, before the contracts, the cameras, the docuseries, the books. When Meghan and Harry stepped back from royal duties, they relinquished that permission, along with the HRH styling, the royal patronages, and the protection of the palace PR machine. They were no longer working royals. And that meant no more royal branding. Period. It was in writing. It was agreed upon. It was supposed to be final. But when Meghan launched as ever, that familiar coronet crept back in, quietly, tastefully, strategically. And that changed everything. There it is. The reaction inside Kensington Palace was swift and uncharacteristically emotional. According to one insider, Prince William saw the branding on a private WhatsApp thread from a senior aide. He didn't speak. He didn't yell. He just stared at the image. And then said quietly, "There it is." Not a scream. Not a scandalized gasp. Just quiet fury. Because for William, this wasn't just about a candle or a logo. This was about the principle of monarchy. It was about the agreement. And more than that, it was about betrayal. All those months of restraint, diplomacy, silence. All those opportunities Meghan had to truly distance herself from the institution. And instead, she brought the crown with her. Into a candle. Into commerce. Into California. It's just a candle. Or is it? Now here's where things get messy. Because Meghan's defenders, many of them powerful, vocal, and well-positioned in media, immediately fired back. It's just a design, some argued. She's always used that monogram, others insisted. She's entitled to her identity, said one prominent celebrity friend in a not-so-subtle tweet. But here's the question no one could answer. Why now? Why, after years of walking away from the firm, the titles, and the traditions, was Meghan suddenly resurrecting this royal motif? And not in a family scrapbook, not in a quiet memoir, but in a consumer product? A product being sold for profit. A product being promoted by a team of stylists, influencers, PR reps, and, according to leaked emails, potentially Netflix cameras. Let me ask you something. If you left a job and publicly criticized your former employer, would you slap their logo on your new product line? Wouldn't that raise a few eyebrows? And what if that logo wasn't yours to begin with? The power of symbols. You might think, it's just a little crown on a letter. Who cares? But royalty runs on symbolism. It's not about bank accounts or popularity contests. It's about lineage, image, continuity. That little coronet isn't just a decorative flourish. It represents state, status, and centuries of protocol. And Meghan knows that. She was briefed on that. She signed agreements about it. So when that monogram reappeared on the box of a $75 lavender candle, well, it wasn't an accident. It was a move. A calculated, deliberate move. One that told the world, I may be in Montecito. I may be outside the palace walls. But I'm still royal. I'm still Duchess Meghan. And I'm going to sell that story, one candle at a time. The public split. When the media caught wind of it, the internet exploded. Royal loyalists called it an insult to the crown. Some even accused Meghan of soft-launching a rival to the Royal Collection Trust, the monarchy's own brand of souvenirs, gifts, and homeware. She's commercializing her royal identity, one furious headline read. Others took a different tone. She earned that monogram, argued one American anchor. She married into that family. She gave them 2 royal children. Why shouldn't she use it? And here's where the irony hit peak levels. The very same people who once cheered for Meghan's independence were now applauding her reclaimed royalty. How does that add up? She wanted out. She left. But now she's using the symbols she rejected to market a lifestyle brand? Is that empowerment? Or is that exploitation? Meghan's team stays quiet. Too quiet. Meanwhile, Meghan's own team stayed largely silent. No official comment. No public defense. But sources close to the brand claimed the monogram was a nod to personal heritage, not a royal endorsement, not a claim of current affiliation, just a symbol. One insider reportedly said, "It's Meghan's story. She lived it. She gets to tell it how she wants." Fair enough. But stories have consequences. And in this case, they might come with legal ones. Because while Meghan was lighting her candle launch, someone else was preparing to strike a match of his own. Prince William. And this time, he wasn't going to settle for silence. "You've crossed the line, and now we're done being polite." That, according to one royal aide, was the final verdict from Prince William just hours after seeing the coronet-crowned candle go viral. For a man trained from birth to be measured, diplomatic, and always 3 steps ahead, this was a rare, emotional deviation from protocol. But something inside him snapped. Maybe it wasn't just the candle. Maybe it was the years of build-up, the whispered betrayals, the Netflix grenades, the silent snubs at family events, the memoir that aired grievances like laundry on the front lawn of Buckingham Palace. Whatever it was, this time, this quiet little branding moment became the tipping point. And now, with that single image, Meghan hadn't just launched a lifestyle company. She had declared war on the monarchy's boundaries. And William? He was ready to fight back, with legal firepower. Inside the monarchy's panic room. Within 24 hours of the candle's soft launch, the royal machine kicked into gear. Emails flew. Phones rang. A confidential Zoom meeting was called between Kensington Palace legal advisors, constitutional experts, and select senior courtiers. The topic? Whether Meghan Markle had breached the post-Megxit agreement by using royal emblems in commercial goods. And for the first time in months, William personally chaired the discussion. Not through intermediaries. Not via aides. He sat at the head of the table, cold, composed, and resolute. According to one insider present at the meeting, he didn't raise his voice, but it was the most intense energy I've ever felt from him. The word he kept using was integrity. Why? Because if they let this slide, if Meghan could brand luxury items with a royal cipher and get away with it, then the monarchy's hold on its own symbols would start to erode. Fast. The line in the sand. You see, royal emblems aren't like corporate trademarks. They represent more than a brand. They represent state power, constitutional legacy, and centuries of sovereign authority. In fact, the use of coronets, ciphers, and royal coats of arms is legally restricted under British law. Unauthorized use is considered an infringement, and in some cases, a violation of national property. So when Meghan slapped one onto a product for sale, she wasn't just bending the rules. She was openly flirting with a legal breach. And William wasn't about to let that go. Not anymore. The first strike, a letter from the future king. Here's where things take a dramatic turn. Before taking legal action, William made one final attempt to resolve the matter privately. He dictated a formal letter, not from a lawyer, but from himself. A personal message. Firm, measured, but unmistakably serious. The letter reportedly read, in part, "While we respect your independence and the journey you have chosen, the use of royal insignia in any commercial context remains unacceptable. No threats, no venom, just a final line of defense." The letter was delivered through official channels to Meghan's representatives. And what did she do? She ghosted it. No response, no apology, no removal of the cipher. In fact, within days, new product teasers emerged, with the monogram now featured more prominently. Some speculated it was a strategic move, Meghan turning the quiet controversy into a marketing tool. Because let's be honest, nothing sells faster than scandal. But if that was her gamble, it came with a very high cost. William goes public, in his own way. When Meghan ignored the letter, the gloves came off. William ordered the palace legal team to begin preparations for formal litigation. Not civil court, not a cease and desist, but a petition to the UK Supreme Court. Why so high? Because this wasn't just a trademark dispute, it was a constitutional matter. The monarchy's legal standing was at stake. And according to sources, William personally approved the unprecedented decision to escalate it to the highest court in the land. Because if the courts ruled in Meghan's favor, it would open the floodgates. Ex-royals, distant cousins, aristocratic influencers, all slapping coronets and ciphers onto candles, perfumes, and silk scarves. That wasn't just undignified. It was dangerous. To William, this was no longer about Meghan. It was about preserving the very identity of the crown. Meghan's silent smile. While the palace readied their legal cannons, Meghan kept posting product photos, mood boards, nature walks in Montecito. No direct mention of the legal drama, just perfectly lit images, pastel tones, and soft messaging about balance and self-reflection. But palace insiders say her silence was part of the strategy. She wasn't ignoring the backlash. She was feeding off it. Because the more the press speculated, the more the brand gained traction. She's playing chess, one royal reporter observed. And William just realized she's 3 moves ahead. But then, something shifted. A single photo surfaced on an obscure design blog, one that blew Meghan's plausible deniability into pieces. The unauthorized prototype. The photo, dated over a year before Ever's official launch, showed an early prototype of the candle. And on the lid, the same monogram, same font, same coronet, same brand packaging. This wasn't a last-minute design choice. It had been planned, built into the DNA of the company. And with that revelation, the palace had what it needed, proof of premeditation. This wasn't accidental. It wasn't overlooked. It was intentional. And with the Supreme Court filing underway, the stakes were now stratospheric. A house divided. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Because behind palace walls, not everyone agreed with William's approach. Some aides quietly feared the optics. William versus Meghan in a courtroom? Wouldn't that only fuel her narrative? Wouldn't that make her look like the victim? Was it really worth it over a monogram? But William, according to one insider, was unmoved. If we cave on this, he reportedly said, we cave on everything. And he had a point. If a candle today, then what tomorrow? Royal robes sold at Target? A Sussex jewelry line featuring Princess Diana's silhouette. At what point does royal lineage become just another commercial brand? This wasn't about ego. It was about precedent. And William knew it. The battle lines are drawn. So now we stand here, on the edge of something unprecedented. The future King of England dragging a former Duchess into court. Not for treason, not for scandal, but for branding. A candle, a coronet, a cipher, a symbol. It sounds ridiculous. Until you realize it might reshape the rules of royalty forever. And it all started with a flickering wick in a Montecito mansion. But Meghan wasn't done. Because while William was building his case, she was building a counterattack. And her next move would leave the palace absolutely blindsided. Who owns a crown? It sounds like a ridiculous question, one that belongs in fairy tales, not courtrooms. But in the world of royalty, the answer isn't just symbolic. It's legal, literal, binding. And in Meghan Markle's case, it might be the very detail that brings her lifestyle empire crashing down. Because when she revived her royal monogram, a single elegant M topped with a tiny coronet, it wasn't just a design choice. It was a dare. A legal, constitutional dare aimed directly at the heart of the institution she once claimed had caged her. And the royal family, especially Prince William, they've decided to call her bluff. But what exactly is a royal cipher? Who gets to use it? And why is Meghan's version causing such an international stir? Let's break it down, because this story gets deeper, messier, and far more calculated than anyone thought. A cipher isn't just a pretty letter. Most people don't realize this, but the royal cipher is one of the oldest symbols of power in British history. It's not a signature. It's not just initials. It's an insignia of authority, of position, of state. Queen Elizabeth II had EIR, Elizabeth II Regina, with a stylized crown atop. King Charles III now uses TSR, Charles III Rex. But those are the sovereign ciphers. Then there are the personal royal monograms, which are unique to each senior member of the royal family, used on official documents, stationery, uniforms, and even vehicles. These monograms are designed by the College of Arms, sanctioned by the monarch, and governed by centuries of heraldic law. Translation? You don't just make your own. You don't slap a crown on a letter and call it royal. And yet, that's exactly what Meghan did. The coronet controversy. Now here's where the story gets spicy. When Meghan married Prince Harry in 2018, She was granted a royal monogram. That's standard protocol for working royals. Her cipher, a beautifully stylized M, topped with the ducal coronet, a miniature crown signifying her rank as a duchess. This monogram was used sparingly, mostly on personal correspondence, formal invitations, and official documents related to her short tenure as a working royal. But then 2020 happened. Megxit, the announcement that shook the monarchy and the public. And as part of the exit agreement, Meghan and Harry agreed to stop using HRH styling, step back from royal duties, and avoid using royal symbols for profit. In fact, the palace released a carefully worded statement. The Sussexes will not use their HRH titles as they are no longer working members of the royal family. What they didn't say, at least not publicly, was that the monogram was included in that restriction. Because while Meghan retained her title legally, the Duchess of Sussex, she no longer represented the crown in any official capacity. And that meant the cipher had to go. No longer entitled to it. According to legal documents reviewed by several royal correspondents, the issue comes down to authorization. Use of the coronet-topped cipher requires approval from the monarch, both in its design and its continued usage. Meghan had that approval while she was working for the crown. But post-Megxit, that approval lapsed. She never reapplied. She never asked for reauthorization, because doing so would have forced a public debate about her standing in the family, and she wasn't prepared to open that can of worms. Instead, she simply revived the cipher, quietly, strategically, and under the radar. This time, not on palace paper, but on a candle. And William noticed. He knew the rules. He helped write them. And Meghan's monogram? It was a legal grenade, one the palace couldn't afford to ignore. An unwritten rule goes to court. This is where things get especially interesting. Until now, these matters were usually handled discreetly. When Princess Diana and Prince Charles divorced, for example, Diana lost the right to use HRH, but retained her title as Princess of Wales. She didn't use royal branding to sell products. When Sarah Ferguson divorced Prince Andrew, she remained the Duchess of York, but faced immense pressure to avoid commercializing that title. She, too, respected the symbolic boundaries. But Meghan? She's operating in a different era. A global, influencer-powered, brand-savvy era, where personal narrative is currency. And she's banking on one thing, that the royal family won't risk looking like bullies by going after her in court. But William isn't bluffing. Because in his eyes, this isn't about Meghan. It's about the precedent. If she gets away with this, if the cipher becomes just another Instagram logo, then the monarchy loses one of its most powerful tools, control over its identity. And once that's gone, everything else becomes negotiable. But she's still a duchess. This is the argument Meghan's defenders keep falling back on. She's still Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. She married into royalty. That's part of her history. True, legally, her title remains intact, just like Sarah Ferguson's. But here's the catch. Titles don't equal branding rights. Meghan can sign letters as the Duchess of Sussex. She can introduce herself that way at public events. But when it comes to commerce, when she starts selling products under a royal cipher, that's where the line gets drawn. Because that cipher is not a name. It's a symbol of state. It represents the monarchy's imprimatur, its seal of dignity. And using it without permission? That's not just distasteful. It's potentially unlawful. The College of Arms speaks. Kind of. In a rare move, a senior herald from the College of Arms, speaking anonymously, was quoted in a British broadsheet as saying, "The use of coronets in personal branding must be consistent with the individual's standing within the royal structure." Post-Megxit, the Sussexes were no longer working royals. Therefore, any public usage of coronets must be reconsidered. Translation? Meghan should have asked. She didn't. And now? She might lose a lot more than her candle line. Because if the court sides with William, the ruling could force Meghan to remove all products bearing the cipher, redesign as Everest branding, publicly acknowledge the breach, and worse, it could open the door for the removal of her title altogether. Yes, that's still on the table. And William, according to insiders, isn't ruling it out. But just as the palace prepared its next legal blow, Meghan flipped the script by doing something no one expected. She brought her children into the fight. "This is for Archie and Lilibet." That was the headline. Soft, maternal, almost impossible to criticize. But those 6 words sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. Because with one carefully worded press statement, issued not directly by Meghan herself, but through a spokesperson as ever, the Duchess had launched a new phase of her campaign. And this time, she wasn't just defending a monogram. She was invoking her children, royal children, the great-grandchildren of Queen Elizabeth II, the niece and nephew of the future King of England. And just like that, the cipher controversy became something bigger, more emotional, more dangerous. Now it wasn't just about candles and legal precedent. Now it was about legacy, bloodlines, and who gets to decide what the next generation of royals inherits. The heritage line launch. Days after the palace quietly prepared to escalate their legal battle over the monogram, Meghan's team unveiled a new addition to as ever's growing product line. The Heritage Collection, delicate packaging, muted pastels, and a tagline that read, "A tribute to where we came from and where we're going, for the ones we love most." At the center of the new campaign, a soft focus photo of 2 child-sized linen robes folded next to a candle bearing the familiar coronet top dome. And underneath the image, the names Archie and Lilibet in cursive gold foil. No faces, no direct images of the children, but the implication was crystal clear. Meghan was linking her brand, her story, her symbol, to her children's royal lineage. And in doing so, she had created a legal and moral landmine the palace couldn't step around. The power of maternal branding. You see, Meghan didn't just launch new products. She launched a narrative. And it was genius. Because what does royalty mean to children born into it, but raised outside it? What do you do when your son is the grandson of a king, but not officially styled as prince? What do you do when your daughter is named after a queen, but can't wear the crown? For Meghan, the answer was clear. You own that identity. You sell that identity. You control the story. And the Heritage Collection became that story's vehicle. In interviews, anonymous friends of Meghan began quietly seeding sympathetic commentary in lifestyle publications. This collection is about memory, about motherhood, about keeping a connection to a past that was never really embraced. Translation? This isn't about profit. It's about protection. For the children. And who could argue with that? William's private fury. Inside Kensington Palace, the mood was radically different. According to one source, when William was briefed on the Heritage Collection launch, he slammed his hand on the conference table and muttered, "She's using them now. She's using the children." Because make no mistake, William adores Archie and Lilibet. He's been privately heartbroken over how little contact he's had with them. But to see them leveraged like this, used as shields in a branding war, that, to him, was unforgivable. And it triggered a new level of urgency. What had begun as a quiet legal discussion was now becoming a full-blown constitutional crisis, with emotional stakes the monarchy hadn't faced since the Diana years. Why the palace feared a backlash? Here's where things got tricky for William. Legally, the palace had a case. A strong one. But emotionally, Meghan had just made it politically radioactive. If the palace pursued the cipher dispute now, the public might not see it as defending royal symbols. They might see it as William attacking a mother, a grieving mother, a silenced woman, a woman simply trying to connect her children to their heritage. It was a narrative as old as time, and one that had brought the monarchy to its knees before. Just ask the ghost of Princess Diana. So William had a choice to make. Push forward with the lawsuit and risk being painted as cruel, or hold back and risk losing control of royal branding forever. Neither option was good, but Meghan? She was all in, and she was about to raise the stakes even higher. The unveiling of the Archie edition. Just when the palace thought the worst had passed, Meghan unveiled a limited edition item, the Archie candle. Same monogram, same coronet, but this time, the box included a handwritten quote. "For the quiet light you brought into this world." Below it, the Archie edition by Duchess Meghan. The backlash was instant. Critics exploded across media. "She's selling her son's name," read one headline. "Is this royal child exploitation?" asked another. But Meghan's defenders rushed in too. "Archie is her son," they said. "She has every right to honor him." And just like that, the conversation shifted again. From legality to morality. From royal protocol to personal pain. The calculated silence from Montecito. Through it all, Meghan said nothing. No interviews. No official statements. Just the soft drip of product launches, emotional taglines, and press leaks hinting at trauma, healing, and reclaiming space. She didn't need to speak. She let the symbolism do the talking. And the coronet topped M? It was everywhere now. On candles, on tea sets, on packaging. On the homepage of As Ever, nestled between soft focus images of lavender fields and handwritten affirmations, the cipher had become a brand, and the palace was running out of time to stop it. The secret phone call to the king. In the middle of the chaos, William made a call, a private one, to his father, King Charles. And according to insiders, the call ended with 6 fateful words. We may have to strip her. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a decision. But it was an acknowledgement. If the cipher war escalated and Meghan refused to comply, the palace might have to consider removing her duchess title entirely. A move that would be unprecedented in the modern monarchy. A move that would make international headlines. A move that would guarantee war. And yet, it was now firmly on the table. But before that decision could be made, the Supreme Court shocked everyone with an announcement no one expected. They were willing to hear the case. What do you do when your past makes you money, but your present says you're not allowed to use it anymore? That's the impossible line Meghan Markle seems to be walking. Because as much as she's publicly distanced herself from royal life, she keeps circling back to it. Not in name only, but in branding, in language, and in symbols that whisper royalty even when the rules scream stop. Welcome to the paradox of As Ever. Meghan's glittering new lifestyle brand that's caught in the crosshairs of royal identity, public nostalgia, and a PR war that shows no signs of slowing down. And at the center of it all, that infamous monogram, the coronet crowned M, the one that launched 1,000 headlines and a Supreme Court case. But the real question isn't just why Meghan used it. It's how she used it, and how carefully she wove royalty into every fabric, every box, every candle in this new empire. Because As Ever is more than a company. It's a statement, a reclaiming, a calculated rebranding of royal aesthetic without the burden of royal duty. And Prince William? He sees it not as innovation, but insubordination. So let's peel back the layers of this brand. Because once you see how deliberate the royal cues really are, you'll understand why the palace is on red alert. A brand built on elegant contradictions. From the first teaser images, As Ever didn't scream royal. It whispered it. The font, a serif typeface reminiscent of official court documents. The colors? Cream, Windsor blue, soft pastels, and gold accents, traditional royal hues. The product names? Windsor Garden, Clarity Balm, Highgrove Linen Mist. Subtle, polished, familiar. To the untrained eye, these were just luxe lifestyle products for the goop generation. But to those who know palace protocol, it was textbook mimicry. Deliberate enough to evoke heritage. Subtle enough to maintain deniability. It's a masterclass in soft power branding. But for Prince William, it's more than clever marketing. It's appropriation. The name that says everything and nothing. Let's talk about the name, As Ever. At first glance, it sounds poetic. But insiders quickly noticed the phrase had an eerie familiarity. As Ever was one of Queen Elizabeth II's most frequent sign-offs in personal letters. She used it for decades. Quietly, consistently. It was her way of saying, with my ongoing support and presence. Even in silence. So when Meghan chose As Ever as the name of her company, was it a tribute or a power play, a link to the Queen's legacy, or a strategic positioning to borrow her gravitas? The palace wasn't flattered. They were furious, because while Meghan has the right to build any business she wants, naming it after a queen's emotional sign-off, while simultaneously being locked in legal battle with that queen's son, that's not brand building. That's narrative warfare. When aesthetic becomes armor. Now here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. As Ever doesn't just borrow royal aesthetic. It borrows royal tone. Every product description is layered with reverence. Words like tradition, resilience, grace under pressure. You can almost hear the palace bells ringing in the background. But here's the twist. These aren't just branding words. They're personal. Each one doubles as a subtweet to Meghan's past in the monarchy. Tradition, she claims to honor. Resilience, she claims to embody. Grace, she claims to have extended. She's not just selling candles and creams. She's selling a narrative of survival. And for millions of consumers, especially those who view her as a wronged woman. The message is magnetic. But for William, it's manipulative. Because in his mind, you don't get to burn the palace down and then sell candles made from the ashes. A royal copy and paste? Let's talk specifics. Several products in the As Ever line bear stunning similarities to items in the Royal Collection Trust, the monarchy's official gift shop. Let's compare. The Royal Collection's English lavender candle, boxed in deep navy with the royal cipher. As Ever's lavender peace candle, boxed in off-white with the coronet M. Both feature calligraphy script. Both use language about heritage and calm. Both priced at over £60. Coincidence? Or branding with intent? One former royal aide put it bluntly. She's repackaged palace dignity as personal healing, and she's selling it back to the public. It's royalty by osmosis. And if the monarchy doesn't push back, what stops other ex-royals, or even royal-adjacent influencers, from doing the same? That's why William is playing hardball. Because if Meghan turns monarchy into merchandise, the institution itself starts to feel like a souvenir shop. The William-Kate comparison. Let's not forget. Meghan isn't the only duchess in town. Kate Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, has her own royal cipher. Her monogram? A C for Catherine, entwined with a coronet, approved by the late Queen herself. It's used sparingly, reserved for correspondence, official gifts, and palace events. Never on products. Never in commercial campaigns. Because Kate's role is still within the firm. She's bound by protocol. And that's what makes Meghan's use of her cipher feel like a betrayal. Same rank. Different rules. One plays by them. The other plays with them. And William? He's had enough of the game. But is Meghan winning the war of symbols? Despite the legal drama, Meghan's strategy seems to be working. Sales for As Ever skyrocketed after the cipher controversy hit the press. Influencers posted unboxings. Lifestyle editors praised this subtle heritage branding. Even critics couldn't stop talking about it. Because controversy sells. And Meghan knows it. By dancing at the edges of royal iconography, without ever outright claiming it, she's created a brand that lives in a powerful gray area. And in that gray, there's gold. But William isn't interested in profits. He's interested in precedent. And from his vantage point, the longer Meghan gets away with this, the weaker the monarchy's grip on its own identity becomes. That's why he's preparing his next move. And this time, he's not relying on the press. He's relying on legal action. Because the next letter Meghan receives won't come from Kensington Palace. It will come from the future king's lawyers. And what's inside may leave her entire brand in jeopardy. It arrived in an envelope so plain, it almost looked forgettable. No crest. No fanfare. Just a thin stack of high-grade legal paper delivered to Meghan Markle's Montecito estate by a neutral third party. But inside, a legal notice that may go down in royal history. This wasn't just a warning. It was a formal declaration of legal intent from the office of Prince William, acting as both the Duke of Cornwall and second in line to the throne. The content? A comprehensive, point-by-point accusation that Meghan Markle, through her company As Ever, had breached the post-Megxit terms by misusing a royal cipher for commercial purposes, appropriating royal aesthetics in a for-profit context, implying royal endorsement through design and language, violating the verbal and written agreements made between the Sussexes and Buckingham Palace in early 2020. In short, William had gone from enough is enough to see you in court. No more veiled warnings. This wasn't like before. This wasn't a private letter from one family member to another. This was the future monarch's legal team moving forward, officially, publicly, and without hesitation. And it changed the entire tone of the feud. No more polite restraint. No more quietly gritting teeth behind palace walls. This was William drawing a red line and saying, this ends here. Because for him, As Ever wasn't just a business. It was a threat. A cultural Trojan horse, slipping royal language and symbolism into candles, teas, and bath oils under the guise of personal storytelling. And once that gate was open, there was no closing it again. A new kind of royal war. Royal insiders compared this moment to the abdication crisis of 1936. That might sound dramatic, but consider the parallels. Back then, King Edward VIII wanted to marry an American divorcee and keep his throne. The monarchy said, you can't have both. So he chose love. and left. Now, nearly a century later, another American woman, also divorced, also controversial, had married into the royal family. She too had stepped back. She too had been told there were rules. And now, she was being told again, you can't have both. You can't reject the crown and still wear its jewels in your logo. You can't leave the firm and still sell its mystique in a candle box. You can't step back and then step forward with a monogram the monarchy gave you and revoked. Meghan's team response. Meghan's legal team, ever shrewd and media savvy, didn't release a full statement, but did leak a clarifying source comment to major outlets. The line they emphasized? The Duchess of Sussex is simply honoring her personal history. No one owns her story. A powerful line, and an intentional one. It repositions the debate, not as one about legality or tradition, but as one about personal autonomy. And when it comes to Meghan Markle, that's the narrative that sells. The woman who broke free. The woman who took back control. The woman who walked out of Buckingham Palace and built something of her own. But again, William wasn't trying to control Meghan's story. He was trying to protect his family's symbols. Symbols passed down through centuries. Symbols that were never meant for candles, linen sprays, or boutique diffusers. When symbols become strategy. Let's go deeper. In the week following the legal notice, Meghan launched a limited-run Foundations collection, and it was filled with loaded language, inspired by timeless British tradition, born from a legacy of grace and resilience. For every woman reclaiming her crown, that last line, reclaiming her crown, the palace was speechless, because now it wasn't even subtle. She wasn't just using royal imagery. She was actively weaponizing it, turning the monarchy's symbols into metaphors for her personal journey. A duchess no longer under royal duty, but still wrapped in the illusion of royalty. And for William, that was the greatest danger, because illusions are powerful, and they sell. The impact on the monarchy's own merchandise. Here's something few people are talking about, but it matters. The Royal Collection Trust, which sells official palace-approved products, saw a noticeable dip in online traffic in the weeks following Ever's explosive debut. Why? Because Meghan's products hit the same demographic, but with a twist. Same aesthetic, same branding tone, but packaged in emotional storytelling. No stiff tradition, no loyalty pledges to the crown, just whispered resilience, healing, identity, and whether or not she realized it. Meghan had just become the monarchy's first real retail rival, which explains why William was panicking. Because this wasn't just about legal symbols anymore. This was about economic influence. If Ever positioned itself as the unofficial royal brand for the disillusioned, the modern, the progressive, then the palace's official products began to look outdated and irrelevant. The emotional edge. And here's the part that really stung. Meghan's supporters began to reframe the narrative entirely. They weren't saying, she's selling royal candles. They were saying, she's reclaiming what was stolen from her. And whether or not that's fair, that's a message the palace can't fight. Because every time William takes a legal step, Meghan's supporters scream, silencing a woman. Every time a royal correspondent critiques, as ever, Twitter threads accuse the monarchy of bullying. And Meghan's team knows it. They count on it. Which is why the branding keeps walking the line between nostalgic and rebellious, between soft and strategic, between crown and confrontation. And as the legal date loomed, Meghan prepared to unveil a final twist. The most daring launch yet, featuring a royal cipher, a secret message, and the Queen herself. And it would send the palace into absolute meltdown. It wasn't a legal threat. Not at first. Not a demand letter from solicitors. Not a cease and desist from the firm's official legal arm. No, before the palace fired its formal legal cannon, something much more personal arrived at Meghan Markle's doorstep. A letter, hand-delivered, on Kensington Palace stationery, signed by none other than Prince William. And what it contained would set in motion the most explosive royal clash since Diana's secret recordings first leaked to the press. Because this wasn't just about a cipher anymore. It was about control. It was about identity. It was about the future of the monarchy. And who gets to profit from its past? To Meghan, no HRH, no title. From the start, the tone was telling. There was no Duchess of Sussex on the envelope. No Her Royal Highness. Just Ms. Meghan Markle Montecito. The kind of envelope that sends a message before it's even opened. It wasn't disrespectful, but it was deliberate. Because for William, titles aren't just honors, they're responsibilities. And Meghan had walked away from hers. Now she was using the trappings of royalty to build an empire. And this letter? It was his final, personal attempt to make her stop before the courts got involved. Inside the letter, William's final plea. Multiple sources, including a palace insider with knowledge of the correspondence, confirmed key lines from William's letter. They weren't emotional. They were cold, pointed, surgical. The continued use of a royal cipher, particularly one that includes a coronet, on for-profit goods stands in direct violation of the understandings reached in 2020. This is not a personal vendetta. It is a matter of royal dignity and institutional responsibility. I respectfully ask that all such branding be removed within 30 days. No threats, no bombshells, just a clear line in the sand. But what made the letter especially damning? The inclusion of photos. Attached were side-by-side comparisons. Meghan's as-ever products using the coronet M. Palace-approved products with the Queen's cipher. The Princess of Wales official monogram. And a final attachment. The original 2020 Megxit agreement, with the clause stating, "No commercial use of royal titles, stylings, or associated symbolism shall be made by the parties henceforth." This wasn't just a suggestion. It was an accusation, one that carried legal weight. Why William wrote it himself? You might ask, why didn't William let the lawyers handle it? Why take the risk of writing Meghan directly? Because William knew this was more than legal. It was strategic. He wanted this letter on record, not just for the courts, but for history. He wanted to be able to say, "I tried to handle this quietly. I gave her a chance." And that's why the tone was calm, even cold. Because emotion would give Meghan ammunition. A trace of bitterness? She could spin it as harassment. A note of jealousy? She could frame it as intimidation. So William kept it clinical. But beneath that cold surface, there was rage. Not just because of the branding, but because of what came next. Meghan's reaction: silence. At first, sources inside Montecito said Meghan received the letter and read it alone. No Archwell team, no PR advisor, no cameras. Just her, a cup of tea, and a 3-page letter from her brother-in-law telling her to tear down her brand's identity. And what did she do? She didn't cry. She didn't rant. She didn't post a passive-aggressive Instagram quote about boundaries or truth. She did something far more dangerous. She said nothing. For 2 days, there was no reply. Then her legal team sent a brief acknowledgement, confirming receipt. But no commitment to comply. No intention to remove the cipher. No apology. Just a line that reportedly read, "The Duchess is reviewing the contents of the letter with her legal counsel and will respond in due course." In palace circles, that meant one thing. Get the barristers ready. She's not backing down. The palace goes on high alert. The moment Meghan's lawyers refused to address William's demands directly, the palace activated its crisis protocol. Because now it wasn't a family matter. It was a constitutional one. And William's private warning had gone unheeded. He brought in a specialist team. Constitutional scholars, branding experts, and a team of London's sharpest barristers who had previously represented the Crown in intellectual property cases. Their goal? File a motion before Meghan's branding fully expanded into international markets. Because once as ever started distributing in the EU, Commonwealth, or Asia, any ruling from the UK Supreme Court would be harder to enforce globally. This was now a race against time. And while the palace moved swiftly, Meghan made her next move quietly, but brilliantly. The counter-narrative begins. While Meghan didn't respond publicly to the letter, her actions spoke louder than any statement. She launched a new line of as-ever journals. On the inside flap, a reprint of a handwritten quote. "No one can take away your story, especially the parts they wish you'd forget." Every influencer who received the product posted it. Hashtag #AsEverStory trended on Instagram and X within 48 hours. Meghan wasn't fighting William's letter with words. She was fighting it with branding. Emotional, elegant, victim-coded, and incredibly effective. Because now the public didn't see a cipher debate. They saw a powerful woman being bullied for reclaiming her truth. And William? He saw his strategy unraveling, again. A secret leaked to the press. Then, the unexpected happened. A royal correspondent published an anonymous leak. A line straight from William's letter. "If these symbols are not removed, You leave the monarchy no choice but to pursue formal remedies. The quote went viral. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't the aggressor. William was. Headlines exploded. Future king threatens Meghan over candle logo. Prince William declares war on Duchess. All this over a monogram. The palace's calculated move to handle things privately had backfired. And Meghan's silence? It now looked like grace under pressure. The real motive? At this point, everyone had an opinion. Some said William was protecting the monarchy. Others said he was punishing Meghan for outshining the firm's relevance. Even Meghan's critics couldn't ignore how composed she appeared. But behind the scenes, she was preparing to detonate a PR bomb that would eclipse everything William had tried to do quietly. Because in a small West London production studio, her team was editing something no one saw coming. A video, a voiceover, a candle, and a letter from Queen Elizabeth herself. And once it aired, there would be no going back. You've crossed the line, and now we're done being polite. That, according to one royal aide, was the final verdict from Prince William just hours after seeing the coronet-crowned candle go viral. For a man trained from birth to be measured, diplomatic, and always 3 steps ahead, this was a rare, emotional deviation from protocol. But something inside him snapped. Maybe it wasn't just the candle. Maybe it was the years of build-up, the whispered betrayals, the Netflix grenades, the silent snubs at family events, the memoir that aired grievances like laundry on the front lawn of Buckingham Palace. Whatever it was, this time, this quiet little branding moment became the tipping point. And now, with that single image, Meghan hadn't just launched a lifestyle company. She had declared war on the monarchy's boundaries. And William? He was ready to fight back, with legal firepower. Inside the monarchy's panic room. Within 24 hours of the candle's soft launch, the royal machine kicked into gear. Emails flew. Phones rang. A confidential Zoom meeting was called between Kensington Palace legal advisors, constitutional experts, and select senior courtiers. The topic? Whether Meghan Markle had breached the post-Megxit agreement by using royal emblems in commercial goods. And for the first time in months, William personally chaired the discussion. Not through intermediaries. Not via aides. He sat at the head of the table, cold, composed, and resolute. According to one insider present at the meeting, he didn't raise his voice, but it was the most intense energy I've ever felt from him. The word he kept using was integrity. Why? Because if they let this slide, if Meghan could brand luxury items with a royal cipher and get away with it, then the monarchy's hold on its own symbols would start to erode. Fast. The line in the sand. You see, royal emblems aren't like corporate trademarks. They represent more than a brand. They represent state power, constitutional legacy, and centuries of sovereign authority. In fact, the use of coronets, ciphers, and royal coats of arms is legally restricted under British law. Unauthorized use is considered an infringement, and in some cases, a violation of national property. So when Meghan slapped one onto a product for sale, she wasn't just bending the rules. She was openly flirting with a legal breach. And William wasn't about to let that go. Not anymore. The first strike, a letter from the future king. Here's where things take a dramatic turn. Before taking legal action, William made one final attempt to resolve the matter privately. He dictated a formal letter, not from a lawyer, but from himself.